Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond. Fuego, it's just unbelievable. Whether it's the flame-grilled carne asada or a signature mango margarita. I had one of those too. They're serving up a literal feast of freedom at Calle Fuego. It's just extraordinary. I love the owners, Andres and Jose. They run such a great restaurant. The service is extraordinary. The atmosphere is great. So if you're in Pineville and the Alexandria area or passing through, or if you live there, go to Calle Fuego and tell them the State of Freedom sent you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the State of Freedom, where we are grounded in faith and the Constitution. We are committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. It is Thursday, February 10th. We're coming to you a little bit late because our guest was backed up, but that's a good thing. It's good that he's getting a lot more airtime. That is so awesome. But I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Danielle.
And we are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network, on Rumble, X, YouTube, Facebook. We're also trying out Pilled today at the request of a few people. You can catch us live. Well, I guess not live. You can always catch us later on our audio-only platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Well, joining us today is a warrior for truth who has been walking through the fire for the last several years. Joe Oltmann has been a relentless advocate for election integrity, and he's been in the belly of the beast in Colorado. Both the demons in the election business and the ones sitting in the executive branch have been fighting him, and in all of his spare time, not fighting demons, he's a successful entrepreneur, tech and guns, I believe, and he's the host of the podcast Joe Oltmann Untamed, and he's running for governor of California. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Colorado.
Why did I put
California? I don't know if I'd have a chance. I don't know if we don't
that's
do
true.
Hey,
I don't know why I even said that.
We could use a couple of Joe Oltmanns in California.
That's true.
Yeah, no, if we don't get rid of machines and mail-in ballots, I have no chance. But if we do, then I have a big chance of winning.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we get into it, let me read the scripture of the day. It is Romans chapter 8, verses 10 through 14. And it says this: if Christ is in you, though the body is dead because of sin, yet the spirit is alive because of righteousness. But if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his spirit who dwells in you. So then, brethren, we are under obligation not to the flesh to live according to the flesh. For if you are living according to the flesh, you must die. But if the spirit, you are putting to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. And I was reading that this morning, and I just thought, wow, it's really a worthy exercise to reflect on our lives and ask, have I been living in a way that puts my own flesh and selfish desires and selfish instincts to death? And for many of us, the last 5 years, this has been a concentrated time of exactly that. The Lord's been doing a deep work in many of us so that we can be effective, so that we can become more like him and live lives led by his Spirit. Because if we're being led by his Spirit, we are the sons and daughters of God. And later in Romans, the same chapter, Paul says that all of creation groans for the revealing of the sons and daughters of God. And that's exactly what's been happening in our country. It's been a time of war and pressure, and a time where all of creation has been groaning. And those of us who love truth and love God have experienced a time of great personal refining, where we've been made to walk through the fire to be made pure. And I believe the time we're moving into now, though, even though it's still a time of intense war, It's a time where the sons and daughters of God are beginning to walk out of that refining fire and be revealed for who they are, for being revealed for who we are, the righteous heirs of God. And that terrifies hell, which I
And
love.
Danielle, I think that the signs of vindication that we are walking toward the sun here are becoming more and more apparent. And I think there have been some recent developments that we'll talk about with our guest today, Joe Oltmann. Joe, you really don't need any introduction, but I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate your being here with us today. And you're a
It's
great
good to be here.
American, sir.
I feel like that scripture was heard. Through this fight in 2022, I put Galatians 4:16 on my garage floor so that I'd drive over it when I came home. And that is, am I the enemy because I tell you the truth? And it's just a reminder that truth has to be the thing that we concentrate and focus on the most. And
Yeah.
so that's yeah.
It's amazing. And I
Joe,
think
is
that
it?
was that scripture was like our scripture for last episode, I think, Chris. Maybe not yesterday,
I
but the
know
one
it was
before that.
Galatians. I know it
Yeah,
was Galatians.
crazy. I'll have to look back and see. It may have
Yeah.
been the one with Professor Clements.
Yeah.
Yeah, David Clements. He's my brother. I mean, he is
Yeah.
literally my brother.
What a
That's
great
what he
guy.
says too.
Joe, do you
Yeah.
think is it inevitable, Joe, that when you pursue the truth and you don't yield in your pursuit and your exposition of the truth, that you are attacked and attacked viciously? Is that just always par for the course?
Yeah, it's the bully pulpit, right? It's the victimology that they've created to say that we're wrong, they're right. It's what the devil does when it squeals in the final hour, and so the attacks intensify. I actually know that I'm on the right track when they do intensify. It's been a difficult 5 years, but definitely, it's been a path that I think God's put us on for a reason, and we're all on different places on that path, right? So it's all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say that the suffering of one would be greater than the other, but I have to tell you, we all internalize and we all carry that burden differently.
We
And
do. And it's interesting you say that, Joe, because C.S. Lewis said that, suffering and courage are all relative. For
Mhm.
one person, depending upon what sort of psychological disposition they have, walking outside and going to greet the neighbor may be an act of profound courage.
Yeah.
Whereas in your case, it's obviously much broader than that. But we are all in our own place, and an act of courage for one may not be for another. Sometimes it's an act of profound courage just to live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing as well. But I want to get back here, Joe. Your ordeal, I believe the genesis of your ordeal was a call with Antifa back in
Yeah.
2020. And you were on that call because you
Was.
had a source that facilitated your access to that call, in which Eric Coomer stated, and you heard him state in 2020, just before the election, don't worry about the election. Trump's not going to win. I made fucking sure of that. You heard that. He sues you for defamation. You've now been ordered to reveal and disclose the identity of your source, and you steadfastly refuse to do so. What is it, Joe, that compels you, even to the point of enormous personal sacrifice as you accrue fines day after day for defying this court order? What is it that makes you steadfast in your defiance here?
Well, the death threats that I've received, the things that I've gone through personally, and my family's gone through. I mean, my wife has been viciously attacked. My daughter has been viciously attacked. My son has been attacked. I don't actually care what you do to me, right? I've never seen a fight I didn't like. I don't like bullies. I don't like evil people, and I've been fighting for a long time against those things. And sacrifice to me is not something like living a selfless life. I think is kind of what God wants us to do. I always refer to. It's funny. I'm glad you brought up scripture because I live my life according to like a certain scriptures, Judges 7, Gideon 300. Me and David walked around, did the Gideon tour, David Clements, the Gideon tour. We went around trying to strengthen resolve of people around the country in prayer, in the ability to stand and speak and to act in that faith. But the 1 John 3:16 says that God gave up his only son and sacrificed his only son, that we should be willing to lay down our lives for our brothers. And so that's kind of it's the other John 3:16, by the way. It's kind of parallels. And so why would I give up someone that doesn't have resources? Why would I give up someone that frankly just facilitate? I heard it, so it wasn't hearsay. I was on the call. I took good notes. And why would I give up that guy when they know that they've already done it? They already knew that they were going to put me through hell. They knew they were going to come after my family. Why would I subject someone that doesn't have the ability to protect themselves so that they can enact their pound of flesh from that person? I'm not built that way. I'm not built to sacrifice others to save myself. And frankly, if they keep focusing in on the phone call and not the substance of everything collectively that defines Eric Coomer and what he did. And so two things are important in this. $1,000 a day. Okay, I pay $1,000 a day. What would I be willing to give up in order to sacrifice and to protect someone and their family for doing the right thing, giving us access to the truth? Because had we not had access to that truth, we wouldn't have been able to dive into the Dominion systems. We wouldn't be able to dive in and have gotten to the place we are now, which frankly, Eric Coomer just admitted last week in vindication for me. He admitted last week that he gave access to the source code in Denver from Serbian coders, right? Un-American coders in a foreign country that gave him full access to our voting systems for 50% of the vote of the American people, right? So it's all coming out. Again, everything comes out in the end. But what amazes me in this entire process is the fact that I've been viciously defamed and sued and attacked and poisoned. And I mean, I could go down the list of all the things that I've suffered. And yet 5 years later, the things that we knew 5 years ago are finally coming out.
Yeah.
Right. It's as if I was like, oh, well, I knew that 5 years ago. I talked about that 5 years ago. I knew that too. But the validation of those things kind of just gets back to, that it was worth it. Because had I not protected that Antifa kid, things could have turned out much differently. And I think that God challenges us to be the protectors of those around us, be our brother's keeper.
Yes,
Yeah.
Joe.
And
So I guess the axiom that everybody has a price is not uniformly applicable, because apparently it doesn't apply to you.
yeah. And as
I
you were
don't have a price.
as
I don't.
you
I
were
don't. You can't buy. You
talk
can't buy me. Sorry.
sorry, I was just going to say, as you were talking, Joe, you were saying, the truth always comes out in the end, but the rub is none of us had any idea when the end would start happening.
Yeah.
A lot of us
Yeah.
thought for sure it would be before the 22 midterms, but that was obviously not the case. So
Yeah. There's a lot of really bad people out there, right? And
Yeah.
those people have wielded the axis of power for so long. I mean, our political establishment, our judiciary, our legislative branch are largely captured and rotted to the core. And we're not just talking about red or blue, because neither side seems to represent the interests of the people. This is an axis of evil that, frankly, is melded together like soft spin yogurt, and you can't really tell one from the other. And so we have to really be careful and discern what leaders are actually doing the right thing. I think President Trump is doing the right thing because they're attacking him the most. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with everything that President Trump does. It means you have to support his policy as the CEO of our nation.
Absolutely.
And so it's, even when Biden was in office, he was an illegitimate president. He was selected for the position. I think one of the things that drives me crazy about this, talking about 2020, is that they've been stealing elections for 2 decades, and we were able to
Right.
prove that as well. And so you have judges that are in positions of power that shouldn't be there. You have bureaucrats that are in positions of power that shouldn't be there. You have laws that have been enacted. You have people that have representatives in different places, whether it be the legislative branch or of a state or the legislative branch of the of Congress. And so how do we peel back this onion? So they've been very tactical about talking about the 2020 election. And I'm here to tell you that it's not the 2020 election. It's the 2018 election, 16 and 14 and 12 and 10 and all the way down to municipal elections. And they stole school boards and they captured states one by one using these fraudulent systems. And so the second that we start pigeonholing it to the 2020 election about President Trump, we lose sight of the fact that the apparatus was used in order to steal the voice holistically of the American people. And that makes it treason, that makes it sedition, and that makes it punishable on a large scale for what can only be described as an insurrection, because the country is not this radical. It's not a blue, if you want to use colors, it's not a blue country. It's a red country with bad actors and bots and manufactured rage and or media that makes it look like they're bigger than they are. It's like the Wizard of Oz all over again.
Yeah,
it is. And this is a question I had for Professor Clements, kind of off air, and maybe you have some thoughts on it as well. If fraud vitiates everything, and they have been fraudulently giving us our election results for where do you have an opinion on the genesis point for when they really in earnest started stealing elections? Because of course, look, Louisiana, this is one thing I told to another friend of yours who I saw this week. Mark Cook has been in Louisiana.
Love him. Yes.
Yeah. Great guy. He came and spoke to a group locally, and we were just talking about, look, Louisiana has a rich history of corruption in politics and stealing elections. So I know they were stealing elections way back in the day when there were just paper ballot boxes, before they figured out how to do it a lot easier with machines. But how far back do you think it goes on the broad scale?
Well, I mean, on the broad scale, I think they found it more and more difficult when you come up to the hanging chads. Here's what some people don't know. Sequoia Voting Systems was the one that created the hanging chad issue in Florida that was adjudicated by Congress in the election that caused us to move towards machines. Then you have Clinton Curtis in 2004. So they needed to have something that was less transparent as we move towards technology that would allow them to use this black box, because people started paying attention to the visceral changes that we had going on in our nation. And the 90s were relatively untouched. Yes, you had, let me buy you lunch, let me buy your vote in places like Chicago. But it really started when they had the mail-in voting. I mean, that's kind of the genesis behind all of this, because that's when you were able to hide any sort of impropriety or meld in that impropriety into stolen or manufactured votes. Yeah. So you can look at every state in the nation that enacted mail-in votes, and it goes from red to blue literally within 1 to 2 cycles, almost immediately. Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, Maryland. I could almost print New York. I could almost literally tell you that as soon as you have mail-in ballots, your state's gone, and it's gone within 2 cycles.
In reality, so Joe, you're saying that in reality, the fact of the matter is, as far as the demographic, those are not really blue states?
No, absolutely not. California is a deep red state. You basically have less than 20% of the population that would vote for any of the nonsense that they have. Nobody votes themselves into peril, and that's really what's happened. So if you look at the free and fair election system that has existed for 250 years, matter of fact, go back to, I forget what state it was, but they basically had a standoff over an election box. It was in the 1950s. I'll look it up. Guys, look that up if you would. But you look up it was on the tip of my tongue. I just talked about this a couple of days ago, where they basically went to the sheriffs in this corrupt environment. They had all come back from war, and they had just had enough. They had stolen these elections. So when you have free and fair elections, you don't cater to or debate the ridiculous. You don't have DEI. You don't have any of these institutional things that are able to creep in, because the people recognize it. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. There's an innate nature, human nature, to recognize the ridiculous. Yeah. Nobody supports women in or men in women's bathrooms. It doesn't exist. Women in men's or men and women's sports. It doesn't exist. The amount of people that support that is so small, and yet we don't have the ability to vote ourselves out of it because they lie. And if what I'm saying is true, not true, I'm a tech guy. Almost 50% of the people that engage with you online are bots. They're not real.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need a bot. 50%.
Joe, 50%.
50. They're bots. They're AI generated environments. They're false conversations. They're fake conversations. They don't exist. They're not real. 50%. 50% of everything that you see happen is designed to create an emotional response from you. 50%.
And is it designed to make them, Joe, to make us believe that there are many more of them than there actually are?
Yes. It's a psychological game. And look, I'm in the tech business, and I'm really good at it. I'm a system architect, and I want to say this. The genesis of my journey started with Eric Coomer being on that call. I'm up elk hunting. Somebody sends me an article that he is actually the one that's talking about 4 precincts in Georgia, and in those 4 precincts, they did an update in the middle of it that basically stopped. And I saw his name. I'm like, holy crap! Wait, 4 precincts. He's doing an update. He's a spokesperson. And then I dug in, right at 9 o'clock at night in the middle of nowhere, going up elk hunting, right? So that's but then I also went and I said, okay, after he sued me and lied about me and said that I did it for clicks, like I didn't need money. I definitely didn't want to put my name out there. I did this because I felt I had an obligation to the people in my community and in my country, right?
Yeah.
But I said, okay, let me dig into Dominion. Can they actually steal an election, or is it just a hyperbolic guy? And then I was like, wait, we have a Georgia runoff race for the Senate seat. And then I built this model and I was like, they're going to steal it. Here's how they're going to do it. I mathematically mapped out how they were going to steal the election, and I went to Washington. And then it happened exactly the way I said it happened. And I met with NSA guys. I met with ODNI people. I met with lawyers. I met with guys that said, how did you get this information? I said, well, I went through and did a map of all the RFPs, RFQs, manuals, things that I had for Dominion. And I built backwards what the vulnerabilities would be. And then I looked at statistically what happened on November 3rd. And then I said, okay, in this runoff election, the Democrats are going to take both seats. And here's how they're going to do it. They're going to flip it, and the vote's going to come down. It's going to come back up. I literally told them exactly what's going to happen. John Eastman was there. His entire speech at Ellipsis with President Trump on Jan 6th was information that he took from me from hours of grilling me over a 2-day period of time.
Wow.
So, and I went to meet with Pompeo's counsel. Pompeo was supposed to be there. And I was in a skiff at the State Department when everything happened at the Capitol, briefing counsel. And he looked up at me and he's sweating in a room that is very cool. And I'm like, oh crap, he knows. And that's how I knew it was an inside job. And I was like, I gotta get out of here, right? So
Joe, when
Pompeo was sweating?
Oh, Pompeo's counsel. Which means Pompeo's
counsel.
Yeah. This is Pompeo knew. Yeah, go ahead.
I got to ask you this. When Coomer said, because, a lot of listeners want to truly understand this. When you heard Eric Coomer say, don't worry about Trump, I took care of that. What did he mean by that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so, I mean, at the time, let me just be clear. At the time, I was looking for Antifa journalists that were parading around. They're actually activists or parading around as journalists. They're writing bad stuff about what we were trying to accomplish.
Right.
We concentrate on 3 things: faith, education, and commerce, the 3 pillars of your community, right? And how we can hand back the reins to the people in the community. I didn't get involved in this over election integrity. And frankly, at the time that he said it, I was thinking, this guy thinks he's like a Jedi warrior. These people are retarded. That's what I thought. Yeah. I was like, this isn't real.
As my dad would say, Joe, this is a guy who's writing checks that his ego can't cash.
Yeah.
That's what you were thinking at the time.
I literally looked at it, I was like, this is stupid. Like, these people really live in some sort of fantasy land.
Yeah.
Until it happened. Until we saw what happened on November 3rd. Even on November 3rd, I didn't know that Dominion ran 50% of the vote of the American people. Nobody did. You didn't. Did you know?
No, absolutely not.
Right. So nobody knew anything. We knew nothing about the fact that they have subverted the voice of the American people. betrayed us on both sides of the aisle, picked our leaders at every level in red states and in blue states using machines that were designed to basically elect who they wanted in that seat. All of our leaders, 90% of them, I mean, how weak are they? These are people you wouldn't hand a pencil to write a check for you if you had to tell them to write it and hand it back to you. You wouldn't even, they're just not real people. They're weaklings. They're cowards. They speak in some sort of like pig Latin dialect that doesn't actually ever address the issue. They're like, oh, we're going to go do this. And you're like, well, that has nothing to do with what people want.
Yeah.
I know what they want. They want higher taxes. Wait, hold on.
Yeah, right.
This is exactly what Chris and I were talking about a couple of days ago. That, you know, we have a few legislators here who are concerned or upset that perhaps we might still be hearkening back to bad votes they made 5 years ago. And I'm like, wait, so you're telling me that we're just supposed to move on from it? It's water under the bridge. You haven't fixed it. So you want me to say that because we have the highest sales tax in the country, that because you did it 5 years ago, it's not coming out of my, it's not coming out of my grocery bill every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just keep on adding taxes to it. Do you think that's how it works? This is what we're dealing with.
All right. I'm going to give you, you're in Louisiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was your previous Secretary of State?
What's his name, Chris? I
Kyle
see his face.
Ardwin.
Kyle
Kyle
Ardwin.
Ardwin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he flew to Colorado and met with me. Sat down with me, scared to death. I recorded the entire thing. He was at a hotel. He was there for a conference. I sat down with him. I told him everything. This is in March of 2021. He's there for a Secretary of State's deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the lobby. You want to know what he said to me?
Yes.
I know the systems are corrupt. You know what he did when he went home?
He got out of Eric.
He did nothing. He got out of Eric and then got right back into the systems and then hired a company to do stuff so it's all talk. He knew when I sat down with him, I'm like, these are the 5 things that are happening in your state. Here's how I know that they're happening. The systems that you have that are home and baked, they're all baked with the same technology that basically is in Dominion, ES&S, Smartmatic, ClearVote, ClearBallot, all of them. They're all the same. And he's like, well, how do you know that? I said, well, here's some irregularities you have in your cast vote record and your ballots. And he was like, holy crap. He was in. I mean, they're all in on it.
So Joe, you explained this to our former Secretary of State in some detail.
Yep.
And he understood what you were saying.
100% he understood. He understood exactly what I was saying. And he did say he was going to get out of Eric. Well, Eric is not the know-how, be-how.
Yeah.
Eric should be illegal because you're supposed to have independent elections per state. It's pretty easy. You either live in this house or you don't live in this house. But they opened up all these trap doors and said, well, you can move here and then 2 days later you can register to vote. So you had literally almost 60,000 people in the state of Louisiana that happened to move into Louisiana within a 2-day period of time. That's not real. I mean,
come on. Not real.
It's the absurdity of what we're dealing with in the state. That's why I say we cater to the ridiculous. Our elected leaders, frankly, are a bunch of retards. I'm sorry if that word offends you. It doesn't.
It's not offending me.
I'm going to bring it back, right? So
yeah.
And our elected leaders make Corky look good, right? If you know who Corky is, it was a great show way back in the day. Pretty awesome. But we cater to the ridiculous, and we allow them to debate it. And we allow the leaders to create chaos. Chaos always favors the op, never favors the people. It's a long-standing CIA way of subverting the sovereignty of nations. They've done it to, 70, 80, 90 nations around the world, right? So
yeah. And I was telling yesterday, Joe, I was telling our guest yesterday, Dr. Robert Malone, I simply used that as an example, this transgender debate that everybody instinctively, psychologically, logically, and intellectually knows full well that a male can't be a female can't be a male, a girl can't be a boy. All of that, it's just absolutely beyond dispute. Yet, because of this massive institutional psychological warfare that we are victims of, you have people who know that instinctively, who've come to a point where they're even afraid to say something that is so glaringly obvious because they're second guessing themselves.
Yeah,
it's really astounding when you look at it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in this information war that we've accepted. right? We've accepted it as dialogue, as education, as these people are smart. They have PhDs, they have, they're doctors, and really what they're doing is they're stood up morons that frankly have no business being in any position of trust or power. And this apparatus that they had that seemed to consume our collegiate or university academia now has bled down into primary schools all the way down to elementary schools, where they are grooming and indoctrinating kids. Right? They're actually using this in order to create I personally call it Stockholm syndrome, that they could get browbeat and bullied by other students around them, which softens them to the idea that the teachers then can push more ideas on them of the ridiculous. They accept it. They're told that their parents are stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. And so you have a wartime thing. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, this has been going on for 25, 30 years that I know of. Yeah. And, this Common Core math, it was developed by Bill Gates, who, frankly, I don't even know if that guy's real or if he's just a CIA sock puppet. Right? Because he talks so unintelligently that I look at, how did he build Microsoft again? How did he do that? Right? And in his spare time of hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein and giving his wife STDs, I don't see how we're dealing with real, intelligent, morally or ethically rounded or centered people, which means that they're trying to destroy our country on both sides of the aisle.
If our elections, I want to ask you this, and then I have a follow-up specifically on Venezuela. But if you woke up tomorrow morning and our elections were completely honest, completely fair, and everybody in the country went to vote either to retain their incumbent officials in power or to oust them in favor of somebody running against them who was more conservative, more in line with traditional values, what would be the result in the country of that election?
We would have less than 10% of the people that are sitting in positions of power at every level that would be retained.
Less than 10%?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You would see what's happening on the primary. And look, this is how I know it. I'm running for governor of Colorado, and the Colorado GOP, run by the same cabal cartel, has taken me off of the website as a candidate for governor. They haven't even put me on it. I registered, did everything I was supposed to do, did all the stuff. You had other candidates like Victor Marks, who is a paper tiger guy that came out of nowhere, who has a flashbang.
Last name Marks? Last name Marks,
yeah. It's so
it's fitting.
Apropos
little on the nose.
Yeah. So came out of nowhere, and he's called, and his little goons have called all the counties to say, you're not allowed to let Joe speak. You're not allowed to Joe go to debate. Well, they're not doing a debate. They're just doing these like light shows. And so, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I always compare myself to like the Forrest Gump of business. I've been hugely successful by the grace of God. But there are things that I'm really good at. And tactically speaking, if you had to, I went to a debate, and in that debate, there's 4 of us on the panel. The first question was, if you become the governor, what are you going to do with the $18 billion budget? And I was the third person. I looked around the room, and you saw people looking at each other. You want to know why? Because nobody gives a crap about an $18 billion budget. They want to be able to feed their families. They want to not have to run away from education. They don't want their kids to be groomed and told that they have to cut off body parts. There's things that we fundamentally have leadership that they're designed to tell us that these are what should be important to people. And so when it got to me, I was like, I have no idea. I don't know. I ran a company that does a couple $100 million in revenue. I just fix it, I guess, but it was like the dumbest questions ever. They were put together by journalists that are like this gotcha. And you had this politician answering the questions, and they answered it well. Well, we're going to do this, and we'll look at every budget. And I'm like, how my people don't give a crap about any of that, right?
Yeah. You're right, because it's exactly what you said earlier, or at least alluded to earlier, that we have to accept the premise that they give us. That's the war that we're in. We have to agree with the point, and then we can fight on the back foot from there on.
Right.
Yeah. Joe, the Venezuela Obviously, you know that we have extracted Maduro.
Yeah.
Nobody has said publicly that one of the motivating factors for that extraction was having to do with elections. And you know the international fraud that's been perpetrated by that country for many, many years. Explain to us and our listeners what's the connection between, is there a connection between that extraction, elections, and our own system here in the United States?
Smartmatic was first developed in 2000. It became a state. It became a company in the United States in late 2000 in Florida, right? So it was a Florida company. Actually, I think it was a Delaware corporation that was then established in Florida. Um, Smartmatic in 2004 was the election system that was used by Hugo Chavez to steal that election. It was largely represented across all countries around the world that were free and fair at that time, that this was a fraudulent election. The people were up in arms about it. It was that seed money for that election, $130 million, was then used to buy Sequoia voting systems in the United States. That was in March of 2005. A month later, they hired a guy named Eric Coomer at Sequoia Voting Systems to be their chief architect, even though at the time, Eric Coomer, the same guy that was on the call that says, hey, don't worry about it, Trump's not going to win, I made effing sure of it, was basically doing websites and didn't have any sort of understanding of election systems. And now they made him the chief architect. He was a doctor, but he had his PhD from UC Berkeley. And the reason why I'm bringing this up and bringing it to the genesis of all of this is because they then assumed 17 states and the District of Columbia under that contract with owning Sequoia voting systems. And CFIUS, C-F-I-U-S, which is an organization by the United States government that looks at threats to the safety or security of the country, security of our nation, national security. In 2006, after a municipal election that Eric Coomer was overseeing with 24 Venezuelans up in Chicago that went terribly wrong and votes flipped and they couldn't figure out who was actually elected, CFIUS came in and says, no, we think that you need to sell Sequoia voting systems, of which then two of the founders and a guy named Eric Coomer at the time moved through the next 3 years managing that business, and until it was finally acquired by Dominion Voting Systems. Dominion Voting Systems out of Canada. Oh, wait, hold on a second. There's a guy named Goran that started Dominion Voting Systems. Actually, it wasn't a Canadian company, it was a Serbian company. And he was the CEO of that Serbian company that went in and was also a founder and CEO of another organization that worked on election equipment in Canada. So Dominion Voting System is not a Canadian company, it's a Serbian company. The guy Goran that runs the Serbian part of this at Dominion Voting Systems also was an intelligence officer at the highest level back in Kosovo. So when you start looking at the basis behind all this, and I just said in 2006, you had these 24 Venezuelans. By the way, all of this is verifiable. I can send you information. I have a Substack on it. I walked through. I collected information behind it. And it's you have New York Times articles, you have congressional committee conferences that they had as well, and committee meetings. Now, keep in mind, all of this is off the heels of Clinton Curtis testifying in front of Congress in December of 2004, saying that he was brought by Feely, who was a congressman at the time, a Republican congressman in Florida, that said, can you build me a system that cannot be detected, that you could flip votes inside the system? Clinton Curtis built that system, and it was ultimately used in elections down in Florida. So the answer to the question is 100%. Those 24 Venezuelans, 3 of those people became whistleblowers, and 2 of those people have survived. 1 of those people was actually killed. 2 of them have survived. They're in some place hidden, and they've given up information about Venezuela's influence and the architecture of Dominion Voting Systems, and ultimately Eric Coomer as the chief architect of Sequoia Voting Systems, and the fact that Smartmatic, which operates in LA County, California, is run by Venezuelans, and Smartmatic retained all of the intellectual property when Sequoia was forced to be sold to Dominion. Smartmatic got to keep that infrastructure as well. And you'll see that people rotated through ES&S, Smartmatic, Dominion, and they went into different systems, bringing some of that technology over and then licensing it to each other through the system. So the entire organism of the elections, Genesis, comes out of Smartmatic, which comes out of Venezuela, who you also have one of the top intelligence chiefs in Venezuela that's sitting in a jail in New York City, and was arrested and charged and sentenced for crimes that he committed against the United States, who's now singing like a bird also and saying, by the way, we've been stealing not only the U.S. elections, but in over 70 nations around the country. So that brings me back to, that's why I say, look, we've already caught him. It's already done. This is the actions that are happening now. When they reached into a sovereign nation and they plucked Maduro out while President Trump was eating Skittles, watching it on the deal without one casualty on the U.S. side, right? They took him and his wife out of his bed, right? I mean, think about that. A sovereign nation, we walked in with 100 guys. Delta Force was used. It's one of the most elite deals. There was no leaks of any kind. They had planned that. If you know anything about planning of stuff like that, it had to be planned for months. So it probably didn't happen as fast as it should have. But now Maduro is facing crimes committed against the United States, some related to drugs, but most of it related to the subversion and foreign interference in elections that have led to the demise and the degradation of our nation.
So that's, Joe, that's the best explanation that I've ever gotten. So there's no question in your mind that a central motivating factor for us going in there was exactly what you've been talking about for the last 2 minutes.
1,000%. I mean, I don't think that we went in there for the election interference and for the stealing of the voice and the sovereignty of our nation. I know for a fact that the ODNI report, which has not been released yet, shows the connection between not just Serbia, but other nations like Venezuela, some interconnections for Italy, intelligence communities in Israel and other places as well. This is an intelligence operation to literally destroy the United States. And you have people like bad actors like Soros. We can talk about Ukraine and the Maidan coup of 2014 when the CIA had to tell everyone, yeah, we're operating inside of Ukraine. And that became basically the devil's playground. You have Hunter Biden, which was hanging out there, and George Soros that was hanging out there, who, by the way, was kicked out of Russia for trying to do this subversion inside of Russia as well. So we have the same actors, World Economic Forum, the NATO players that have been put in positions all over the world in order to basically destroy the ethos of normal, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Have you seen, are there any connections between Ukraine and Serbia? Because you can't look at the corruption of Ukraine and the proximity of the two countries and think that there's nothing there.
yeah, listen, Serbians are operating all over the United States. They own one of the largest. So some of the same people that we saw, if you were to draw a visual map, like a mind map of how they're all connected, Goran is actually connected to another guy, and I'm not going to tell you his name here on the show, but he runs one of the largest distribution trucking companies around the country. You have a company called Roaming Networks, which happened out of Serbia, which has connections to China and Huawei, and was funded by UBS Bank, which then has connections to England. And you start putting all these pieces together, and you can document it. Yeah, Serbia is what I call a hellhole. So is Ukraine. The reason why, Putin went in there is because, they put blue hats on the shores of Russia and said, hey, we're going to bring them into NATO, which was a part of the agreement that they wouldn't go any further east. And so they lied. And then they've said, well, we said we lied. We wanted to make sure that we built up enough of a force inside of Ukraine. And remember, Ukraine had almost 50 million people in the country at the beginning part of the war, and there's less than 20 million people in that country today. So we don't know how many have been killed. We do know that lots of people fled. We've forgotten more about what happened inside of Ukraine than most people can. We can sit here and talk about, the journalist that was actually tortured and killed inside of a Ukrainian prison, that was speaking out about Biden and some of the corruption that's happening there. We could talk about the elected leaders that on the steps of what is their Congress or legislative body was gunned down for not agreeing to back what I call the evil little midget, Zelensky.
Yeah.
And so, look, you couldn't have scripted it differently than what it is now. You have an actor inside of a position of power in Ukraine. You've got all sorts of people around in Europe. You can see what's happening in France, Spain, UK. They're being overrun with this radical ideology, these Muslim radicals that are basically enslaving, and which is what's happening in the United States, enslaving the people in those nations, and then they put up hate crime laws to make it so it's impossible for you to speak out against what's actually happening, and then
that's so alarming, so alarming. That would make core speech illegal that way. I found that
here.
Just beginning to.
I know we definitely.
And we could give you an example of that in our own state, Joe. No doubt, Joe. Who is sitting behind the screen here? I know, obviously that the software can be manipulated, has been manipulated. Who is doing the manipulating? Who is sitting there saying, we need Joe Smith to win this election, and we need him to get, whatever it takes. He's got to win by a point or two at the end of the night. We got to make sure that happens. How's that working?
Well, let's ask ourselves a different question. Why are they doing this? Right? Because who's not that important? Who's not that important? Because the who that we have to contend with are the who that have been selected and put in positions of power to be obstructionist against the U.S. ethos and to usher in, both in Democrat and Republican strongholds, usher in these radical ideas on the education front, on the tax front, on the infrastructure front. And so who is irrelevant. It's the organizational apparatuses that have been created. But because if you destroy those, like you took away the power for USAID, who in the USAID was responsible for it? Well, the CIA. The USAID basically is CIA. It's not USAID, it's CIA. And I saw this back in early 2000s when I was a negotiator in the Middle East and Africa, working in multiple nations. And by the way, I've never worked for the US government in any capacity. I've literally tried to do everything I can to save and help people overseas. And I did some really radically amazing things over there under the guise of faith to help them solve massive problems. And I stopped doing that in 2013 because my daughter went to high school and she thought I was going to die every time I left. So I decided to come home and be a father. And so I did that and started my company by the grace of God. And 14 years later, here we are. I've done some amazing things, found myself right back in politics, which I've been running away from for a long time. So,
Joe, can I ask you something? Speaking of which, or or you want to finish your thought there? Because something just popped into my head that I have to ask you about.
Yeah, I mean, whether we're talking about Soros or, I don't believe in the whole, I don't subscribe to the Rothschild, although you could probably trace it all the way back. It probably is true. But we have to look at the actors that are publicly facing, like Yuval Noah Harari, who's this really bad guy with the World Economic Forum. You got what is the guy's name? Klaus Schwab, another really bad guy. Obviously, you got Soros and Alex Soros. These are basically the guys that they prop up. He's not bright. Neither one of them is very bright. So you know that there's someone behind them even. So it's a crime family. And crime families make it very difficult for you to see the boss. I think our intelligence apparatus knows who the boss is, but I think the CIA is complicit. Our enemy is both foreign and domestic. It is internal and it is external. And they're working very hard to destroy us, make us fight each other while they sit and carry away our spoils.
Yeah. And I know you have to go here, Joe, but I do want to know, do you expect the elections to get fixed before November? And we need them before quite a while before. Yes, exactly. Which is minutes away.
Yeah. So let me give you a little bit of hopium
I'll take the hopium.
But that is tied to fact, right? President Trump endured 4 years of absolute turmoil. He was ridiculed, he was sued, he was defamed. That defamation has continued on. His family was attacked. He was almost thrown in jail. Had he not won the election, we'd be talking about something completely different right now. With President Trump. They had to interfere in the election in 2024 in order to make sure that he won that race by stopping them from injecting the 25 or 30 million fraudulent ballots. It's not 20, it's not 2 million, it's not 3 million. It's 25 to 30 million ballots in the election in 2020 that were injected in there in order to steal the vote for Joe Biden. Okay. Now, do you think President Trump is going to, from a legacy standpoint, leave office without fixing this, knowing that not him, but his granddaughter is going to endure the inflicted pain on her and his sons and his daughters? There's no way in holy hell that President Trump has an appetite for it. And he's not going to let them impeach him, and he's not going to let the fraud stand. So just imagine someone opening up the doors of war and saying, I'm coming for all of you. When Barron Trump walked over to Joe Biden, I have it under pretty good authority that he's like, now it's our turn. I have a pretty good idea that President Trump will smile and he will look at you, but make no mistake about it. He said it very clearly when he was asked, do you think you're going to heaven? And his eyes rolled back and he looked up and he's like, no, I don't. You wanna know why? Because I think what he sees that he's going to have to do is going to challenge every part of whether or not he's willing to stand in the middle of humanity and make the decisions that are necessary in order to save not just our nation, but the world. And I think God put him there for a reason. But God.
Yeah.
But God.
Indeed.
But God. One final question here,
Yeah.
Joe. So it's fair to say that our action in Venezuela was a shot across the bow, and certainly affirms that President Trump is fully aware of the fraud that occurs inside of these computers.
100%. President Trump he's not a flippant individual. He's a very smart guy. He's seen the sharp side of defeat, and he's seen the enlightenment of winning and success. So if you think that he's a dumb man or he doesn't understand the implications of what he's doing, I'm going to tell you right now, he is not that guy. Like he's like Wyatt Earp. Right? Just because he doesn't swing for your head doesn't mean he can't. Right. Yeah. And so right now he's putting all the pieces in place, and he's having to fight through what I call the Judases and the Brutuses. Yeah. If you remember, he's going to have to enact a Julius Caesar moment where he comes in, he rips the Band-Aid off and does some really, really, really radical things in order to save the nation from this evil. And I think he's prepared to do it. I think it's coming. And I think that it's going to shake the foundation of our nation, and 50,000, 60,000 people are going to end up in jail or worse.
Did Danielle ask you whether this is going to come before the midterms?
Absolutely, will come before the midterms. I have absolute confidence it will come. Yeah, I mean, look, this is the moment in time by which, if you're going to recognize evil for evil, and everyone's talked about it, it has to happen this year. And remember, they've been stealing elections for a long time, which means we have illegitimate laws. We got judges that are basically defectors and ideologues that have done real damage to our country. And then they have to eliminate all the legislators that were there that have basically betrayed the American people. And the American people are pissed. Republican,
very
Democrat,
much so.
Independent. It doesn't matter. They have no appetite for any of it. Right?
Yeah.
So.
What would you, Joe, what would you say, just very briefly, what would you say to the Louisiana Secretary of State, our Secretary of State, who continues to try to move forward and invest $150 million of our money in new voting computers right now?
You're a traitor. I would tell you right now, you're a traitor. I think the people of Louisiana need to rise up and evict these people. You don't stand for the people of Louisiana. They don't have any appetite for it, right? And I think the people of Louisiana, by all means necessary, should remove those people that betray the very people that they're chartered to represent. It's of, for, and by the people, right? It doesn't mean I'm calling for violence. That means that force is necessary in order to force evil back into the hole it came from. And if you're not willing to lose your life to save the lives of your children, your grandchildren, and generations you'll never know, then that's the most un-American person that I've ever met. And those aren't the people that I want to hang my hat with. I knew that I was never making it out of this life alive. I knew that. I knew that there was great risk and peril for me standing up and saying and doing the things that I do, and I'm okay with it. I don't care about the book that's written down here. I care about the book that God writes, and I think that He's up there, writing things down, and He's letting the people that are in positions of power basically show themselves. And so I think your Secretary of State is a weasel. If he's trying to pass $150 million in new voting machines, what he's trying to do is make ink dry, build that sidewalk, and take away the voice of the people of Louisiana, kind of put the final stick into the sovereignty of the people of Louisiana. So I would say people of Louisiana need to rise up, go pick up their furniture, throw it out the window, and tell that guy to go beat feet. That's what I think.
Yeah. I love it. I'm right there with you, Joe. And we need to get you back on to talk about your gubernatorial race. We had so many things we wanted to talk to you about, but we're not going to hold you hostage here. Just appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. And so thankful for the fight that you've put up. And we're going to be starting to see some victories here soon.
Yeah,
I think so too.
I think we're already seeing victories. We just have to give it up to God. But God, it's the two words that if you can just, somebody says, well, I don't believe anything's going to happen. You say, but God, but God, everything is possible. Without Him, nothing is possible. With Him, everything is possible. And this is a part of the restoration. This is the part where we have to get in the weeds, be able to grip that sword. And frankly, people have said, Joe, you call for violence. No, I call for consequences and accountability, and for evil to be pushed out of our community so we can protect the very precious thing that we should always stand around, and that is our children.
Yeah. Amen.
And we can't protect them if we can't elect good people.
I agree.
And that's what you're fighting for. Joe Oltmann, God bless you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Such a pleasure. Please tell David Clements that we said hello. We're big fans of his as well.
Yeah. All right.
God bless you, man.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Chris, I love that warriors are coming on this show. It's so amazing. I love Joe's story, and every time, I think we've only had him on once before, but every time I hear him talk, I feel like more nuggets come out. I had no idea about his sitting down with Kyle Ardoin, and I kind of wonder if Nancy Landry got the readout of that meeting. She was his right-hand man.
Exactly. And Oltmann is saying that Ardoin was like, wow, I can't believe this. He says that Ardoin was fully aware of our vulnerabilities in our voting system.
And I want to, which brings me back to that point of fraud vitiates everything. So, I've been having this little mental exercise that I'd like to involve you in, Chris, which is if our elections have been stolen for at least 20 years, that means that every single law passed by invalid lawmakers can't stand.
Absolutely, because they were invalid acts. They're void, what's called void ab initio, void on their face, because they were instituted by illegitimate leaders. They were not legitimately elected. They had no actual constitutional authority to do anything. So yes, you're right. It would make everything that they did, if you prove the fraud, prove that they were not legitimately elected, at that point, every official act that they took while they were in office is rendered absolutely null and void.
Can you imagine? Think about what that would mean in practice. It would mean literally like people wouldn't even know what laws are real anymore. I think we just have to say, you know what, let's just scrub everything and start back with the Constitution. How about that?
Well, I'll tell you what, there are a lot of people who would probably support that. We know the Constitution is valid. We know the Constitution is real. Let's scrub everything away and just start
Including
from
some of
there.
those, and including some of those amendments need to be scrubbed away. Let's be
Yeah,
real.
exactly. Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
they were passed at the hands of illegitimate people.
Well, absolutely. The question is, how do we determine who was, as you said, who was legitimate, who was illegitimate,
Well,
who was legitimately
if
elected, and who
if
wasn't?
if there was one illegitimate person that could have flipped the vote, then it should delegitimize the
W-
entire action.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I mean that's a good that's a very good point. Danielle, one of the things that kept coming to my mind during the interview was how many guys do you know who would sit there in defiance of a court order day after day after day after day in order to protect the identity of a source? Nobody does that.
That's a good
Nobody would
man.
do that. It's like, I mean, Joe Oltmann, he's like Gordon Liddy. Gordon Liddy was the only close Richard Nixon ally who absolutely refused, under any circumstances, to ever disclose classified confidential information about President Nixon or anything about any plans that they may have had. He just never did. And you know what his concern always was? He said, look, if you read his book, Will, he says, I was never, it's just like Joe, I was never concerned about my own life. I didn't really care if they came in and took me out. I just didn't want them taking my wife and kids out when they're walking out of the grocery store.
Yeah.
That was the concern that I had. Altman reminds me a lot of G. Gordon Liddy. It's just unbelievable, his will and his backbone. And I believe, Danielle, that his vindication is coming, and there are signs of it everywhere now.
Yeah, it's glorious. And it looks good on him, right? He's wearing it well. I know he's suffered some really dark days, so I'm so pleased to see that he is able, the weight on his shoulders seems to have lifted. And you were talking about the hundred or the $1,000 accruing every single day that he's having to pay. And I don't know if he's paying it or if it's just racking up a big bill, but I was just thinking, it sounds like God has really blessed his business, and he's using those finances to do God's work. I feel like that's just such a teaching moment for me. Like, we can't just think that, oh, God made us successful or has brought us success so that we can hoard it for ourselves to get things, right? I think the reason that he blesses us is so that whenever he asks us to do something or we're in a position um, of difficulty, that we're able to help the people that he's called us to help.
Absolutely. No question about it. And he definitely does have, a heart after God. No doubt about it. He just a great American and a great figure. And the signs of Venezuela, Fulton County, Dominion seems to be collapsing at this point. And I just think that I was so reassured to hear him say that President Trump is 100% and fully aware of the specific fraud that occurs inside of these computers.
Yeah.
And I believe him when he says that. And I would be quite surprised, particularly in light of everything that is at stake, if there is not a major change in our election landscape before the midterms.
Yeah. One thing that I've has been on my mind since um, probably the last week or two, since when the Epstein files came out. I think they came out either on a Friday or over the weekend. This like drop of 3 or 3.5 million pages of files. It's President Trump is flooding the zone again. And that happened right on the heels of that Fulton County raid. And you can just see that the narrative is overwhelming the media. Now everybody can only talk. I don't know if you tried to turn on the news last night. The only thing people can talk about is Savannah Guthrie's mom's kidnapping, which is horrific. I'm not trying to make light of that. I'm just saying, think about all the things that are consuming people right now, all of the ways we're being distracted. What pieces are being put into place so that these dominoes can fall? in short order. That's what I'm excited about. When I see Trump flooding the zone through his capabilities, through his cabinet, which is what's happening, I know that something great has to be going on.
Absolutely. And he is a master at it. He is a master at overwhelming the media. So they don't know what to focus on. They don't know. And meanwhile, he's doing something uh i- i- covertly, certainly legally, but covertly in the background that nobody's paying any attention to.
Yeah.
He is a just a master of psychology. Uh, I have, tremendous respect for his capacity to do that. Danielle, it all comes back down to the elections. It all comes back down to the elections. And if we get it straight before the midterms, did you hear what Joe said? That if we had completely legitimate and honest elections in our country, 10% of our officials would remain in office.
And I tell you, it's not. I think that's a really good number. I think some of those are probably because they're good people, you know, and then I think some of them because of name recognition. Because you think about Chris, a lot of voters vote for people. They get into the poll or they get into the election booth or voting booth, and they don't even know who's on the ballot. People literally do go to vote that are that uninformed, and they just vote for the person whose name they know. So we have a lot of work to do on the education front. I know we do our level best. Now, I mean, we can't force people to watch us, obviously. So if they're not interested in learning about what's going on, we can't make them. But people need to be talking to their neighbors about what their elected officials are really up to, because we can't be having people going into the voting booth not knowing who's on the ballot and what they're about.
Yeah, and that's one of the central focuses of the state of freedom, to make sure that everybody understands what their legislators are doing, which is why everybody who's listening now needs to share and subscribe to the state of freedom until
Yeah.
everybody in Louisiana knows who we are and what we are about. And as I said yesterday, Danielle, we will radically change the way political advocacy is done in the state of Louisiana as we continue forward. But it's extraordinary what we're doing. It's extraordinary to be able to have guests like Joe Oltmann on our show. And
Yeah.
I pray every day for his complete and total vindication, and really the vindication of our country with
Yeah.
regard to our elections, because as you've said, there's nothing more important. If we don't have secure, fair elections, we just don't have anything.
Yeah, you're so right. And look, we have a chat here from Facebook from Shannon. She says, standing alone can only be done when you have people that support you, even if they are having to do it anonymously. Standing alone is actually standing for beliefs or something greater than ourselves. I couldn't have said it better, Shannon. Yeah.
Shannon. By the way, you know what Shannon means, right?
What does it mean?
Translated, it means long river.
Oh,
Yeah. So thank
that's
you,
something.
Shannon.
That's awesome. Uh, no real announcements for next week. Tuesday is going to be a surprise, so we'll find out We'll find out before y'all do who our guest is going to be, but we still have to schedule it. And then Wednesday, back with For the Love of Freedom. A gentleman named Adam Hartage is going to come on and talk about his new book, Protecting Our Kids in a World of AI. And then let me see who's coming on Thursday, Chris. I usually have this teed up. I usually am a little bit better at this. But let me see. On Thursday, that will be. Oh, on Thursday, we'll have Representative Danny McCormick. And I guess he'll probably. Well, I don't want to spill the beans, but anyway, just know that Rep. Danny McCormick is planning to be with us
A
on
great
Thursday.
American Representative Danny McCormick. Love having
Yeah.
him on. He's been on a couple of times before, and we're going to talk about some really important things about the upcoming legislative session. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah. And Shannon said, I and many others appreciate what you guys do. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shannon. We appreciate you. We couldn't do this without y'all. Absolutely.
Thank you, Shannon. We really appreciate you.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Well, I guess I will see you on Tuesday unless you have anything else up your
I
sleeve.
look forward to seeing you again, Danielle. And in the words of the immortal William F. Buckley Jr., one of my heroes, inveighing we shall go.
We shall. Thank you, Chris. God bless.
Thank you. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business. I went to Red Zeppelin yesterday with my second oldest son, Eli, and I got this large veggie pizza, which is the best in Baton Rouge. Red Zeppelin is the best kept secret, but because of us, it's really not a secret anymore. Anybody who has not been to Red Zeppelin on Perkins Road in Baton Rouge, you're truly missing out. The best environment, the best service, and the best pizza in the state of Louisiana. Go to Red Zeppelin today. Tell them the State of Freedom sent you.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.